An unlikely gang of thieves crack an impenetrable fortress, pulling off the crime of the century. Disappearing with their millions, they confound police and capture the imagination of the country. Post-World War II Boston was a city of social extremes. While blue bloods occupied Beacon Hill, blue-collar immigrants kept their factories humming. At a mere 75 cents an hour, this hard labor was paid for with hard cash. Each payday, tens of thousands of dollars flowed into company counting rooms. They became natural targets for a gang of crooks looking for easy money.
All right, how was everything, boys?
Real good.
Good? Excellent. Food all right?
Gang leader Anthony Pino had his own take on the American dream.
All right.
Although Pino owned a gas station, his first love was larceny.
How are you, buddy? Good to see you.
Henry Baker.
All right,
Nice
pull up
to
a chair,
meet you.
pull up a chair. Come on in.
Over the years, he built his own crew out of neighborhood toughs.
One shot, but we're going to take our time. We're going to pick our shot. I'm going to make sure every one of us is... Look, this is the
Big Joe
score.
McGinnis owned a bar and laundered money.
All right?
Specs O'Keefe was a stick-up man, known for shaking down local bookies and their clients. Jazz Maffey, a former high school football star, ran a numbers racket.
Cut up 8 different ways.
Although they had netted some decent dough from the counting rooms, Pino wanted to go after the big money.
Money's up on the side.
He wanted to go after Brinks.
Going through the garage. It's unbelievable. It's almost like they're giving it to us already.
Back in the 40s, Brink's Armored Car Service was America's bank on wheels. The company moved millions of dollars through city streets every day. The Brinks cash was tempting, but most crooks considered it unattainable. Pino believed otherwise. He tailed the trucks and drivers, studying their every move. All the cash came and went from a renovated garage in the North End. Inside was enough money to change a man's life forever.
What you doing? Looks like he's sleeping.
Pino spent months casing the building.
I think we could do it in 17. They must be in a counter. They must be in a vault.
He learned how the big shipments were handled and memorized each of the cashier's responsibilities. 50 years ago, working out of the Boston office, FBI agent John Kehoe knew Pino's style.
He was a mastermind, but he was also a plugger. He was determined, and what he wanted to obtain, he would go through any kind of planning in order to obtain it.
To Pino, the key to the job was simplicity. His plan was to strike after the place was closed and clean out the vault. When the last cashier left for the night, the gang made their move. The gang easily broke into the building and reached their target, a massive vault constructed of steel encased in concrete block.
Do your stuff, huh? Okay. Let's see what we got here. Okay, it looks pretty basic here.
More riches than Pino could imagine were just a few feet away.
All right. I'm thinking we put an 8-bit
But the
right
gang
here.
had a problem.
You see, the only problem with that is we got this anti-lock mechanism. Tell me we can't do this. I don't know yet. It's looking, it's good. It can be done. Okay. All right. I don't think it's gonna go.
Not only was the vault wired to an alarm company, The lock mechanism was more complicated than anything they had ever seen.
That'd be the first place we look. That's the first thing we're going to see.
It was back to the drawing board.
I don't want to see anybody hurt out of this.
The gang brainstormed night after night.
I'm not getting pinched on this one.
That means we don't got no.
They could use nitroglycerin to destroy the vault, but it was too risky.
This is gonna happen. We need to know exactly what time.
An explosion would bring the authorities running. Instead, Pino's men broke into the alarm company and stole a diagram of the Brinks alarm system. They also obtained information from the U.S. Patent Office.
They asked McGinnis to send down to Washington somebody to look over at a Washington office, to see if he could come up with any information concerning the alarm system.
Hey, let me see. I know you're gonna.
But none of the patent drawings could help override the system. Pino realized there was no way of breaking into the vault without getting caught.
We're gonna clean them like fish.
They would have to take the vault when it was open, and by force.
Yeah, that's right. No, this guy got fired. He got, yeah, let him go.
10:07.
Their timing would have to be perfect.
There's been 3 gone for, I don't know, like 30, 40 minutes now.
The vault was only open for 15 minutes each night, and 6 locked doors stood in their way.
All right.
Jimmying the locks would eat up valuable time.
2 guys.
But Pino had a plan.
Come on. This one here.
All right. We need some light. Right down here.
The gang broke into the Brinks building nightly to remove the locks from each of the interior doors.
Come on. We haven't got all day. Come on. You got it?
Once keys were made, the locks were carefully replaced.
Go. All right, that's 3, huh? So why don't you show me the rest of this place? Step right this way.
Pino probably spent anywhere up from 1.5 to 2 years walking in and out of the place. It was like a full-time job with Tony, and he spent a great deal of time there.
The gang now had a complete set of keys. With free passage to the vault room, it was only a matter of time before they got their hands on all that cash. After years of planning, the Brinks robbery was set for Tuesday, January 17th, 1950. The men were dressed as Brinks drivers and wore galoshes to muffle their footsteps. Once they were inside, they had to move fast. Always thinking ahead, Pino had the men remove anything that might jingle. Around 7 p.m., lookout man Victor Costa took up his post outside the Brinks building. The rest of the gang would wait for his signal. Timing was critical. They only had a 15-minute window to clean out the vault. If they entered the building too early, they risked getting caught. But if they waited too long, the money would be locked away for the night. Finally, the plan was in motion. Using their keys, the gang worked their way through the building. They pulled on rubber masks as they neared the vault room. The cashiers were outnumbered and outgunned.
Gentlemen.
One of the guards started to reach for his weapon. And O'Keefe said to him, "Don't do it." The guard then gave up the idea of pulling the gun.
The size of the hall was overwhelming. As the gang hurried to empty the vault, they were startled by the sound of a door buzzer. In all their scheming, no one counted on visitors. The gang got lucky. It was just a garage attendant, unaware of the heist in progress. After they'd entered the building, the crew sped off with the cash.
Oh, Mom, Pop, what are you doing now? Hey, go back
They took their bounty to
the
Maffey's
boys are coming
place.
over. We got some business to talk over, have a couple of
At
drinks.
this time of night?
Yeah, don't worry, we're not going to be late. You know, we'll be quiet. Go on upstairs. Go back to sleep here, okay? Go on, go on.
Because we're getting pushed up.
Oh, no. It's just that the boys are coming right in, so, you know, I don't want them disturbing you. So go on up. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. We won't be long. We won't be late.
Okay, don't make too much noise.
Okay.
His elderly parents had no idea of the riches that now filled their living room. The gang decided to dispose of the checks and traceable bills. They would stow the rest until the heat died down. Even before the money was counted, Pino's gang suspected it was the biggest haul of their lives. They'd finally made the major leagues. Meanwhile, Pino sped to McGinnis's liquor store to establish an alibi.
Happy to hear it. And your brother?
Doing fine.
Well, thanks for keeping the city safe.
Absolutely.
Just by luck, he ran into a cop.
Absolutely.
How are you?
Doing dynamite.
How's your mom doing?
She's doing better.
Yes?
Doing better.
Pino hoped the officer would remember he was nowhere near the robbery.
I'll do that.
Make sure it's off duty.
Absolutely, guys.
On the other side of town, the head cashier called police with stunning news.
Operator, get the police.
Brinks had been robbed.
Yeah.
Cops and reporters flocked to the scene of the crime. By the time the FBI got there, the vault room was in chaos.
FBI, we're taking charge.
Federal agent Leonard Frizzoli was assigned to the investigation.
We got there and things were pretty much in a turmoil there. There were reporters already there walking all over the place and quite a few people there. And so what we had to do is try to preserve the crime scene.
But there wasn't much to preserve. The only physical evidence, the rope and tape the robbers had used to tie up the cashiers, proved too common to trace.
Blue, navy blue peacocks came through with mask and hats on and took the guard.
Eddie Corsetti was a police reporter.
I wish I had chewing gum on my shoes when I was walking around that office because, there had to be, a wild guess, there had to be $100,000 laying around on the floor.
Need you to come on in.
Through all the mess, the FBI saw a meticulously planned caper, an enormous heist that smelled like an inside job.
As you already know, we were tied up here.
But polygraph tests would quickly clear the Brinks employees of any suspicion. The investigators had nothing.
I don't think so. It was
The
mostly
Brinks
yellow.
robbery became an overnight sensation. Newspapers described how the wily gang held up an impenetrable vault like a candy store. To 1950s America, it was the crime of the century. The robbers had walked away with a whopping $1.5 million in cash.
An incredible crime in Boston. The $1.5 million holdup of an armored car service by 9 bandits, one of the nation's few multi-million-dollar stick-ups. Before scooping up the cash, they bound and gagged the 5 employees present. One of them, James R. Allen, tells the rest of the story.
They kept another trip, another trip. I kept saying, Sergeant, when is it going to be over?
Brinks wanted the men caught and punished. Without any clues, they offered an astronomical reward.
They came out with this offer of $100,000. Not wanted dead or alive, wanted dead.
But the public didn't share that sentiment.
We conducted a poll, the newspaper did. I don't know, I think they contacted something like 500 people. And I think 75% were hoping they'd get away with it.
With so little evidence to go on, the police and the FBI knew that the crime of the century might never be solved. FBI agents were becoming frustrated. Under the glare of the media, they were no closer to solving the Brinks robbery. Little useful evidence was found at the crime scene, and since the robbers had worn masks, nobody could identify the culprits either. Besides the cashiers, the only other witnesses were a couple of teenagers who'd seen the getaway vehicle. But all they could offer was a vague description of the truck. Without a license plate number, it would be almost impossible to find.
We looked up and there was a truck.
And you said about 10 to 15 miles an hour. Is there anything else now that you can think about?
FBI agent John Larkin worked the case.
Regardless of what the suspicions were and how accurate they might have been, unless somebody cooperated in the long run, this was not going to be solved.
Desperate for answers, agents grilled every crook in town.
And that's all I know. That's all I know. Honest to God.
Before long, Boston's underworld soon wanted the Brinks crew arrested as much as the cops did.
You know, he's the one you really want to check out. Follow Pino.
A couple of informants actually fingered Pino. It was hard for the cops to believe that a two-bit hood like Tony Pino could have pulled off a heist this huge.
Oh, good, how about you?
Well, we've been okay, but we're still trying to get some information here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we're hoping you can help us.
Besides, a fellow police officer had already confirmed Pino's alibi.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, 123.
The rest of the gang had alibis as well. But since they involved friends and family, there was no way to either prove or disprove them. Still, it was hard to believe that the crime of the century could have been pulled off by this band of second-rate crooks.
They were all well known by the Boston police. They all had records. But on a small time scale, nothing that no one would ever dream that that crowd could pull off a robbery of $1.5 million. No one.
What kind of stuff is it?
2 months passed before police found a single lead. Several pieces of a burned truck turned up at a city dump.
Why would somebody do that?
Further investigation revealed that 2 of Pino's associates lived near that same dump. The police began to wonder if they had been too hasty. Maybe Pino's gang had been involved after all. They checked out the serial numbers on the truck parts. The numbers matched the model of the getaway vehicle seen speeding away from Brinks. The FBI set up round-the-clock surveillance on the gang. But once again, they had underestimated Tony Pino. The gang leader ordered his men to limit their time together. If they needed to communicate, they'd stop by Pino's gas station to deliver messages. The FBI now believed Pino's gang had something to hide, but they didn't have the evidence to prove it. 2 years after the heist, a grand jury convened and called Pino and his gang as witnesses. The results were disappointing.
The hope was that some of them might see the light and cooperate, but they all took the Fifth Amendment. That was about it.
The grand jury failed to produce a single indictment. Pino's patience paid off. On January 17, 1953, the federal statute of limitations expired. It was starting to look as if he had devised the perfect crime. Still, the government refused to give up. They still had 3 years pending on the state charges. The FBI increased the pressure. They committed unlimited money and man-hours to catching the robbers in whatever way they could. Deportation proceedings were initiated against Pino. Gang members were charged with tax evasion and bootlegging.
Boys, come on.
Tension mounted as the men found themselves in expensive legal battles. The gang started to crumble. O'Keefe accused Pino of cheating him out of his share of the money and made threats to the men if he didn't get his due. Pino decided to beat him to the punch. Ironically, O'Keefe would land in jail for breaking his parole. Nearly 6 years after the heist, and just 11 days before the Massachusetts statute of limitations would run out, O'Keefe was ready to make a deal. In exchange for a light sentence, Specs O'Keefe confessed to the robbery and fingered the other members of the gang. In June of 1956, a tip led investigators to the only money that would ever be recovered from the Brinks heist. It was a disappointing victory. After spending 6 years and $29 million on the investigation, they recovered a measly $51,000. By the time the trial began on August 6, 1956, 2 of the gang members had already died of natural causes. With the exception of O'Keefe, the other robbers all received life sentences, but were paroled in the 60s and 70s.
I got something with me.
By their own accounts, the amount of money they actually saw wasn't worth it. Drinking, gambling, and legal debts quickly ate up their fortune. While rich in the memories of their celebrated caper, Boston's most famous robbers spent the rest of their lives flat broke.
How much money you think is up?
Let's go! Down!
Canada's most famous gang of robbers set their sights south of the border.
90 seconds!
They take millions from U.S. banks and lead police on a chase that lasts 10 long years. On the night of November 15th, 1979, a guard at Canada's Joyceville Penitentiary in Ontario made a startling discovery. Patrick Mitchell, a convicted thief, had collapsed.
Problem in cell block 3.
He was sweating profusely and short of breath.
Something's wrong with him.
The prison nurse recognized that Mitchell was in trouble.
This pulse is racing.
This was no inmate scam to get out of a work detail. The man's pulse was racing, and he was barely coherent.
Respond to cell block 3 right away.
It looked like a heart attack.
First number. Is that good or bad? Better than it was.
But Mitchell would never make it to the emergency room. At the hospital, the ambulance was greeted not by doctors, but by gunmen.
Hands up! Don't move! Don't move! Get the stretcher out of the way! Let's get over there. He's not doing well.
Within seconds, they vanished into the darkness.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Mitchell's escape plan worked flawlessly.
Come on, we gotta get there.
Thanks to the help of his longtime friends and accomplices, Stephen Reed and Lionel Wright. Earlier that evening, Mitchell dissolved a pack of cigarettes in water and drank the toxic brew. He knew the massive dose of nicotine would shock his system and mimic the symptoms of a heart attack.
Stay with it. Stay with it. Pull him out. Pull him out.
Reed and Wright had been eager to free the leader of their gang. Now they feared he might not survive the stunt. Paddy Mitchell and his accomplices were Canada's most notorious bank robbers. The trio had been convicted of stealing $165,000 worth of gold bullion from the Ottawa International Airport. It was one of the biggest heists in Canadian history. Now Mitchell would also be known as the mastermind behind one of the most daring prison breaks ever attempted.
People are going to be on the subway.
An escape that wouldn't have been possible without the help of his friends.
No.
The three men had been stealing for years. They joined forces in the early 1970s.
Patty, what do you think?
Stephen Reed was a high school dropout and petty criminal. Lionel Wright worked as a bookkeeper by day and a thief by night.
He came in from over here.
Right, and he took a walk around the back.
The men were relieved when Mitchell did in fact recover. Once he was feeling up to it, they wasted no time planning their next move. They knew it was too risky to stay in Ottawa. The three men headed to San Diego, California. For Paddy, San Diego was like a dream come true. The weather was perfect and the banks were plentiful. Paddy and his boys liked to live life in the fast lane. They just needed a little cash to finance their fun.
Paddy thought that he died and gone to heaven when he went to the United States and saw the land of riches. So many banks, as he says, such nice money.
Mitchell was determined to get his hands on some of that nice money. Over the next several weeks, the men cased several banks. They were looking for a building with light security and back alleys for a quick getaway. A small credit union in San Diego seemed to fit the bill. The gang opened accounts so they could check out the bank's physical layout and personnel procedures. All the while, They took note of guard stations and peak business hours.
Okay, well, listen, sir, thank you very much. Okay. Hope to see you. Okay, thank you very much. I want to come in this way.
The men took great care in planning their
This
crime.
alleyway and park. That's what I want to
Each man made his contribution.
This is the interstate that we want.
Lionel Wright's bookish ways were put to good use researching the bank's operations. Mitchell and Reed mapped out escape routes. They talked through every aspect of the heist.
I don't disagree with that.
over to here.
Once inside, they would each have a specific task.
How are we getting out?
We didn't decide.
Wright would man the getaway car out front.
You did.
Reed would watch the customers,
That's the best way
and
to
Mitchell
do it.
would
That's
grab the
maybe we
cash.
can actually, now that I'm thinking of it,
It all had to happen fast.
Well, most bandits are not real sophisticated. We have thousands of robberies each year, and most of them are not really sophisticated in the way they go about their business. However, these guys were different.
They were bold, meticulous, and above all, patient. The gang spent weeks refining their plan.
Let's go, let's go! Down, down!
In February of 1980, they hit their first target, a large credit union in San Diego.
Get down! Hurry it up!
Although the gang carried guns, Mitchell never intended to use them. If they moved fast enough, they would be long gone before the police even arrived.
Throw the bag! Bag! Come on! Let's go, let's go!
Just to be sure, they carried a stopwatch.
90 seconds! Throw me the bag! Right now!
The robbers left the bank after exactly 90 seconds. They took only the money they could grab in that amount of time. No longer, no exceptions.
They were in the bank only a certain amount of time, and then they weren't too greedy in that when the end of that time came, they were gone.
Oh, man! What a score!
Still pumped with adrenaline, the men counted the take from their first U.S. heist. The cash totaled over $20,000. In a mere 90 seconds, they had been able to steal nearly 1/4 of their biggest job in Canada.
I knew that one was going to be. Oh, yeah, you knew. You didn't have it all.
Life in America was looking better all the time. The gang was eager for more. They made plans to rob banks all over San Diego.
Guarding too.
They began wearing outlandish Halloween masks to distract witnesses from noticing more pertinent details like height, weight, or hair color.
Ready to do it? Go.
And they always carried a stopwatch. In their first 2 months in San Diego, they hit 4 banks for a total of $70,000. The press named them the Stopwatch Gang. For Patty Mitchell, the U.S. was indeed the land of opportunity. By the end of the year, holdups in San Diego County had doubled. Police were baffled. Following another robbery, the FBI was called in to search for clues.
What do you got? Well, we got 3 men come in. See any car?
Mitchell left them none. Witnesses could only recall the details of the robbers' weird masks.
One was like a skeleton.
As the law struggled to find the mysterious Stopwatch Gang, its members enjoyed the good life. They treated themselves and friends to designer clothes, flashy jewelry, trips to Vegas, and big nights on the town. With each passing month, the gang grew richer and more confident. The FBI simply grew more frustrated. By late summer 1980, Paddy Mitchell's Canadian bandits were becoming too well known. Or so he feared. He needed one last score. A heist so big, he and his men could lay low in luxury for years. But he knew he would have to be patient.
He was a consummate planner. He would case a joint if it took a month, 2 months, 3 months. He would follow the Brinks trucks around, the Wells Fargo trucks. He'd get their schedule down pat. He would know exactly to the second, to the minute, when they would be arriving at the bank.
Mitchell noticed that armored trucks made cash pickups and deliveries to the Bank of America every Tuesday morning.
Plus, look at,
The schedule never varied. The trucks arrived like clockwork at exactly 10:30 a.m.
You know that we're pretending to be.
This was the shot he had been waiting for. There was just one problem.
It's just the layout.
The trucks were manned by 2 armed guards. If they jumped the guard on the street, his partner in the truck might start shooting. Mitchell preferred to catch the guard alone in the bank as he exited the vault. That meant the gang would have to wait for him inside.
All right, we got the schedule. All right, what are we doing?
For this heist, Halloween masks were out.
What's the mirror?
Instead, Wright found library books on how to apply wigs and theatrical makeup.
All right, to look at yourself while you're putting on the makeup.
Meanwhile, Mitchell and Reed scrutinized pickup times at dumpsters around the city.
All right, listen, this isn't gonna work.
They would have to dump their disguises as quickly as possible after the heist. On September 23, 1980, Stephen Reed and Lionel Wright entered the Bank of America, wearing their new disguises. Paddy Mitchell waited in the getaway car outside. Mitchell suspected the bank customers would be so busy going about their own business that they wouldn't even notice the strange beards his men were wearing. He was right. Suddenly, the stopwatch gang sprang into action. Wright and Reed quickly disarmed the guard and went to work. They were finished in 90 seconds. The gang escaped without being followed. According to plan, they gathered up the tools of their trade: a stolen license plate, bank bags, disguises, and stashed them in a dumpster. Then they left town, heading towards Arizona. Paddy Mitchell had gotten his big score. It was the largest armed robbery in San Diego history. As usual, bank employees remembered little about the gunmen, beyond their peculiar beards and wigs. The FBI had nothing to work with, at first. In all his meticulous planning, there was one thing Paddy Mitchell hadn't thought of. The regularly scheduled pickup at the dumpster was delayed. A man scavenging for bottles discovered 3 cloth bags with shipping tags from the Bank of America. A search of the dumpster turned up the wigs, makeup, and clothing used in the robbery. FBI technicians matched fingerprints on the gear to 2 escaped Canadian convicts, Patrick Mitchell and Stephen Reed. Agents learned that Mitchell Reed and another Canadian, Lionel Wright, had worked together in the past.
Take a look at what we got over here.
They compared their mugshots with photos from bank security cameras. The suspects resembled the disguised gunmen. FBI agents felt sure they had finally identified the stopwatch gang.
How they compare to this one.
But they still had to find them.
Listen, I'm special agent.
Authorities traced the gang's getaway car to a rental agency, where they discovered the vehicle had been rented by one of the robbers. DMV records led them to Oak Creek, Arizona. The crew had taken up residence in a luxurious home in Oak Creek. Their wealth and generosity had already made them many friends in the community. They were enjoying themselves so much, they were unaware they were being watched.
Okay, California.
They were known as being big spenders, and when they went out for dinner with folks, they always treated. They were passing out $20 bills on a regular basis, and certainly why not? It's not theirs. And so they were living the good life up there.
In the early morning hours of October 31st, 1980, Stephen Reed was pulled over on what he thought was a routine traffic violation. For the sleepy town of Oak Creek, it was anything but routine.
Secure.
Officials raided the hideout, where they captured Wright.
Stay down, partner. Sit down.
But the leader of the stopwatch gang had escaped again.
Do you understand those rights?
We had to actually start from ground zero again and start contacting people, sources, informants, things of this nature. And just hit the streets again trying to find the guy and you know, put it out across the country as to what his MO is and start looking for similar MOs to see if we can pinpoint a location where he might be at.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Patty Mitchell had been away with a girlfriend the day of the raid. On hearing of his buddy's capture, he shaved his mustache, took his money from a safety deposit box, and hit the road. Patty Mitchell lived on the run for 7 long years. He always managed to stay one step ahead of the FBI. He continued to rob banks, always getting in and out in under 2 minutes. He never once fired his gun.
He was good at what he did. He never hurt anybody. Patty never fired a shot in anger. He was a gentleman bandit.
He'd also become a master of disguise. He grew beards, dyed his hair, wore wigs. Police never knew who they were looking for. His crime spree elevated him to the FBI's 10 most wanted list. One of his many faces was featured on a television crime show.
The FBI needs your help to capture one of the craftiest bank robbers in North America.
The show was flooded with tips that led police to the Philippines.
That was the first real concrete information that we had had on the whereabouts of Patty Mitchell in probably 4 years.
In the Philippines, the bank robbing playboy had actually settled down. He'd married a local woman and started a family. Agents raided Mitchell's home. But once again, he was long gone by the time they arrived.
To have had this opportunity and to have let it slip away again after so many years of hard work and finding him again as far away as the Philippines was something that was not very pleasant to go through. But we had to pick it up again and start looking for him again. And we knew that he would probably come back to the United States. We just didn't know when or where.
Unbeknownst to authorities, Patty Mitchell had quietly slipped into the small town of South Haven, Mississippi on February 21st, 1994. It didn't stay quiet for long.
South Haven Police.
At around 10 a.m., the South Haven police received a disturbing call. A bomb had been placed at City Hall.
Unit 311.
Respond, 8791 Highway 51 to South Haven City Hall. Have a bomb threat called into that location.
Step on the radio?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go.
The call seemed suspicious to Police Chief Tom Long.
Okay, bomb threat. That means usually for us some type of diversion. What is the other end of this? So we're talking, okay, let's all watch our financial institutions.
But he quickly did the math. South Haven had 13 banks and limited resources. He sent 2 officers to check out the bomb threat.
Yes, sir. Okay, Bob. Hustle out.
He ordered the rest of his small staff to cover as many of the banks as they could. Narcotics, homicide, and patrol officers all hit the street. On their way to cover the Deposit Guarantee National Bank, officers got a call that a robbery was in progress. Chief Long's hunch was right. His men were already in the vicinity. They reached the bank in less than 90 seconds. Over the years, the leader of the infamous stopwatch gang had stolen millions of dollars in cities all over the world. But his adventure would end on the hot pavement of a small town in Mississippi.
One of the agents, FBI agents, stepped in my office and was just beaming, you know, said, "This is Patrick Mitchell. We have been looking for this guy for 10 years. He's been on the most wanted list."
For Patty Mitchell, the clock had finally run out.
Your pockets.
I think Mitchell played on, number one, the 90-second response, and that is, if you can get in and out in 90 seconds and have you some good avenues of exit, then the odds are you'll probably be successful a few times. But you're only delaying the inevitable. You are going to get caught sooner or later.
In 1994, Patrick Michael Mitchell was found guilty of bank robbery and possession of a handgun. He was sentenced to 30 years in a federal prison.
Side, please.
He also owed Canada another 18 years for the gold bullion heist back in 1974. Stopwatch accomplice Lionel Wright served his time and was paroled. Stephen Reed also served his time and was paroled. He was sentenced to 18 years for another robbery in Canada in 1999.
Let's go! Down, right now!
During the course of his career, Patty Mitchell spent less than 90 minutes robbing millions from banks. For those 90 minutes, he will spend the next 50 years of his life behind bars. He is scheduled to be released in the year 2043 at the age of 99. Police officers and criminals inhabit the same dark world of scams and schemes. But what happens when the line blurs between the cops and the robbers? Medford, Massachusetts was a quaint bedroom community outside Boston. Medford was a quiet town, immune from big city crime. But one night in 1960, that small town silence was shattered by gunfire.
1054.
Jerry Clementi and his partner rushed to the scene of an armed robbery at a local liquor store. Although he was still a rookie, Clementi was determined not to let the robbers get away.
Open the door slowly. Hands out. Both. Both hands out. Get down. Spread them
He
arms.
risked his own life to protect his partner and bring the thieves to justice.
Got him secured.
The mayor of Medford awarded Clementi the coveted Medal of Honor. As a hometown hero, his career advanced quickly. Officer Dan Gately worked with Clementi.
He had a lot of people that he knew and he was friendly with. And he was a well-liked person. A lot of guys liked him. But then again, they didn't know him.
Can I get you anything else?
To know him was to know that he liked the perks that came along with being a cop.
Yep, that's for me. Yep. Take a look at that.
After several years on the force, he began to bend the rules.
Wow. Quantum Pro 1404. Thanks. A lot more stuff. Well, that can probably see. Hey, I appreciate it. A little something.
Whenever Clementi and his fellow cops investigated a store robbery, they helped themselves to the merchandise.
Oh, she always has seafood. How's Lewis?
Exploiting a corrupt network of cops,
Hey, Ed, what's up?
Clementi used his influence and power to get what he wanted at a very young age. He rose quickly through the ranks.
Clementi is a captain. When the captain came on the scene, it was quite a thing because you have a captain out there with you. They looked up to him. So if he said to do this or do that, they'd try to do him a favor in a minute.
The favor Clementi most appreciated was to be let in on a scam.
You guys up to?
The place I was talking to you about. So, what do you think, Jerry?
In late 1979, Sergeant Joe Bangs brought up the idea of burglarizing a television store.
Figure maybe about $10,000.
But to Clementi, the heist was too small to justify the risk. Boston Globe reporter Paul Langner.
Jerry Clementi must be given credit for a vision. He said, my God, if you're going to do that kind of high-tech bypassing of a burglar alarm, let's not bother with the dinky television store. Let's go for something really big.
Clementi had his eye on the Depositors Trust Company, a small-town bank with a vault full of safe deposit boxes. As far as Clementi was concerned, there was but one obstacle standing between him and untold wealth. A 12-inch thick metal door.
They were very bold and arrogant. They've been getting away with a lot of things for a long time. And, you know, they just had the feeling that they couldn't be caught.
As cops, Clementi and Bangs knew every crook in town.
Just you have everything together? Working on it. Just going to make plans.
Along with fellow officer Tom Doherty, they recruited two of the best safecrackers in the business. The men thought the vault door was impossible to crack. Clementi was determined to find another way in.
We're lucky if we robbed it 10 grand each. For what? Maybe 10 years.
The gang learned everything they could about the layout of the vault. Posing as a customer, Doherty measured the room and noted every detail. Clementi wanted to move fast. He brought on another experienced safecracker.
Taking care of the explosion.
The gang was now made up of 3 cops and 3 robbers.
Back here. We're gonna have our walk.
Since breaking through the vault door was impossible, They needed an alternate point of entry.
Once they close.
Blueprints revealed they could gain access to the ceiling of the vault via the optical shop next door. The ceiling was constructed of reinforced concrete and was 2 feet thick. The plan was ambitious and risky, but Clementi figured it was worth it.
Hey.
Clementi chose the Memorial Day weekend for the heist. The bank would be closed for 3 days, giving them plenty of time to stash the loot before the robbery was even discovered. A consummate planner, Clementi set up his alibi beforehand. He assigned himself to work overtime at the town carnival. That way, he could work a few hours and slip away unnoticed. On Saturday night, Clementi set his plan in motion. As a police officer, he knew the optical shop was not protected by an alarm. After midnight on Sunday morning, Clementi led his men in the back door. If everything went according to plan, they would be rich men in 3 short hours. While Clementi was playing robber, his friend Doherty was playing cop. From his position outside the bank, he could monitor his police radio to warn the gang in case they were detected.
Doherty was actually the shift commander in Medford on the night of the burglary. And he had directed patrols to other ends of the city and away from Medford Square and away from the Depositors Trust Bank.
They headed for the loft of the optical shop. From here, they could drill directly into the ceiling of the vault. Outside, Doherty couldn't hear the drilling. In under an hour, they were through the first wall. Then, Clementi heard voices. The men froze, fearing the worst. Just as Clementi and his gang were about to break through the ceiling of the vault, they heard voices. Concerned, Doherty went to investigate. He found the owners of the ice cream parlor on the other side of the bank. The couple were doing inventory.
Break into the area and probably be a good idea to go ahead and pack it up for the evening. Okay.
Lieutenant Doherty told them to leave. There had been break-ins in the area, and it wasn't safe.
Okay, good night, folks. Okay, everything's good.
Once they were gone, he radioed the gang to resume work. But once again, the plan faltered. Their tools hadn't even dented the vault ceiling. They would have to resort to something more powerful. Clementi radioed Doherty there was going to be an explosion. He knew that was sure to draw attention. They had to risk it.
The first time it didn't go through, so they put in a stronger stick, a full stick, I guess. And this time it went through, and the 2 blasts failed to generate a single call to the Medford police station.
Now nothing stood between them and all the money they'd ever dreamed of. The men systematically raided the vault. But they had lost precious time. After only an hour inside the vault, Clementi told his men it was time to go. They had to leave the bank before dawn to avoid being seen.
Let's get it going. Get the tools together.
The robbers slipped out the back of the optical shop as silently as they had entered. In one night's work, they had taken over $300,000.
Amazing. I guess.
It was more money than the men had seen in nearly 15 years of petty thefts. But they realized they had left so much behind. They had cracked only a fraction of the 1,000 safety deposit boxes.
Be careful with these things here. Let's go, guys. Let's get this.
They decided to go back for more. On Sunday, the men made sure they were seen around town.
That's why I told you I don't want him out all the time.
They were careful not to stray from their routines.
Maybe we can, who knows,
Until it was time to spring into action. It was after midnight when the gang went back to the bank a second time. Fueled by their greed, they worked with assembly line efficiency. Again, they ran out of time. Before they knew it, dawn was breaking, and it was time to go. Although they had only cracked half the boxes, the heist was enormous. And still, it was not enough. They had to make one last trip before the bank opened on Tuesday morning. After 3 nights of work, they were all rich men. The men divided up the cash.
We did all right.
Bangs would fence the jewelry once the heat died down. On May 27, 1980, the employees at the Depositors Trust Company returned to work. They were in for the surprise of their lives. Soon, the bank was swarming with detectives. Ironically, Thomas Doherty was one of the officers who worked the scene. The sheer volume of the heist made police suspect that the thieves had been inside the bank for several days. Next door, the owner of the optical shop led investigators to the gaping hole he had discovered.
We knew that it happened over the Memorial Day weekend, but we didn't know whether it was 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, etc. There was a lot of work to be done. You know, there were a lot more people to talk to.
The FBI questioned anyone who might have seen anything.
Did you notice anything outside the windows?
The couple from the ice cream parlor told the agents about the police officer who warned them to leave their shop.
Well, what happened? Look out the windows.
Unfortunately, they could not recall the officer's name. Investigators checked the weekend patrol schedule at the Medford police station.
There was one other, the new guy that came in. He rode with us that night.
There was no record of the encounter.
We met in Police Academy.
At 9 a.m., the bank failed to open. Crowds gathered outside. Anxious customers were told to return the next day to be interviewed by police. Investigators had no idea how much had been taken. They would first have to obtain inventories from the box holders. At the bank, hundreds of anxious customers lined up to describe their losses to police. They learned they would never recover what had been taken. The bank did not insure the contents of safe deposit boxes. The estimates of the heist soared as pressure grew to solve the crime. Police felt helpless.
Well, it was certainly frustrating for us as police officers, as investigators, because we weren't getting anywhere. We had no physical evidence at the time of the crime of depositor's trust.
Okay, let's take all this.
Investigators desperately needed a breakthrough in what was beginning to look like the perfect crime.
Okay.
In the days following the depositor's trust robbery, authorities realized they were dealing with the biggest theft in Massachusetts history. Clementi and his gang stayed cool. The cops went back to being police officers, and the robbers laid low.
They came right down through the vault.
Clementi stayed with the force, and Tommy Doherty stayed with the Medford force. They did something which was clever in that they agreed not to be too ostentatious about their spending.
Clementi put a down payment on a modest timeshare condo, and other gang members began spending their share of the loot a little bit at a time.
Okay, so you'll get.
But it was too late. They had already attracted attention. A week after the heist, an anonymous tip cast suspicion on Jerry Clementi and Thomas Doherty.
I think it was Clemente. I know Clemente was...
Investigators were stunned. If they couldn't trust two veteran police officers, they couldn't trust anyone on the force.
We kept it right to a small few in our own office, a very small few in the Medford Police Department. And that was it. I mean, we operated cloak and dagger. I mean, we were very, very secretive about everything.
Despite Clementi's distinguished police record, investigators paid him a visit.
What's up? I want to ask you a few
He told them he knew nothing about the break-in and named several police officers who provided him with alibis. Police then questioned Thomas Doherty. He told them they would need a warrant to enter his house.
No problem.
Although they were suspicious of Clementi and Doherty, they had no evidence to hand the DA.
Well, we
the case went cold.
Take a look at these, will you, please? Thank you.
It was becoming clear if they were ever going to solve this crime, they would have to use a different approach.
The investigation itself was not going anywhere fast, and we needed a break. We knew we needed a break, and over the next couple of years that followed, we tried to force that break by following people, putting pressure on people, that type of thing.
Yeah, maybe you want to go to prison too, right?
Clemente tried to keep his gang together, but 4 years of police pressure took its toll. Doherty and Bangs began using and then dealing drugs. Before long, they were bitter enemies. Finally, investigators got the break they had been waiting for. Sergeant Joseph Bangs was ambushed and shot in a garage. He was rushed to a local hospital. As police investigated the incident, they searched his house and car. They found a briefcase full of jewelry and $10,000 in Canadian cash. Police suspected the attempt on Bang's life was tied to the Depositors Trust heist. When Bangs recovered, he named his shooter. Lieutenant Thomas Doherty was arrested and charged with attempted murder.
Next door.
At Doherty's trial, Bangs blew the case wide open.
Allowed us in. Broke into the alarm system. Disarmed the alarm system. And Clemente let us
Prosecutors asked where he'd gotten the jewelry.
set the fuse. Your Honor, at the time, it goes back a lot further than that.
Bangs responded that it was part of the Depositors Trust heist. In exchange for immunity, Bangs agreed to give investigators all the details they needed.
That's right. 3 of us.
Captain Jerry Clemente received 30 to 40 years in prison for his part in the theft. He was paroled in 2000. Lieutenant Thomas Doherty got 18 to 20 and is still serving time. The rest of the gang got 10 to 15 for their part in the robbery.
But when a police officer is out there acting as a criminal, we don't have any tolerance for that. These were guys that were criminals masquerading as cops.
Joseph Bangs entered the Witness Protection Program and now lives under an assumed identity.